This podcast is sponsored by AXA Farm Insurance. AXA offers tailored cover to fit your unique needs, whether it's public liability or protection for your family home, outbuildings or farm vehicles. Based in Athlone, the AXA Farm team of agri-specialists and regional managers work together to ensure you receive the seamless support you need. Switching to AXA is easy thanks to an innovative online service that enables you to quickly and easily find the best cover for your needs. For more information, head to AXA.ie. AXA Insurance Stack is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland. Thanks for listening, and we hope you enjoy the show.
Hello and welcome to the Farming Week, the podcast brought to you by Agriland and AXA, keeping you up to date with all the latest in Irish agriculture. I'm Charles O'Donnell and I'm joined this week by Athlone O'Brien and Breifne O'Brien. We have a lot to get through this week, including Ireland's favourite make of tractor, so stay tuned to the end of the podcast to know more about that. But we're going to start this week's podcast in the same place we started last week's, and that is on the EU-Mercosur trade agreement. Since we were here last Thursday, we've seen a key vote on Mercosur among EU member states, a huge protest here in Ireland against the deal, protests elsewhere in Europe as well. And now we understand European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen is going to travel to South America this weekend to sign the deal. Aisling, a lot has happened in the last 7 days, so can you bring us up to speed?
Yeah, that's for sure, Charles. Mercosur definitely is the story that keeps giving. So last week when we spoke here on the podcast, we had received confirmation from the government that Ireland was indeed going to vote against the EU-Mercosur trade agreement at a European Council meeting which was held last Friday. Now, as we know, the deal would create the world's biggest free trade zone covering a market of over 700 million consumers. But as we well know here on this podcast, farmers have huge reservations about the deal. Now, a majority of EU member states voted in favour of the Mercosur agreement during that meeting last Friday, including, as had been anticipated, Italy, which had raised concerns about the deal back in December, meaning that the vote was delayed. But Italy did decide to change position and did vote in favour on Friday. Now, Ireland, France, Hungary, Poland and Austria all voted against, and Belgium abstained. Now, this was not enough to secure a blocking minority, as it didn't reach that threshold of 35% of the EU population. Now, there had been speculation ahead of the vote that Romania could have voted against, but that didn't actually turn out to be the case in the end. So essentially, this means that the Council authorised the signature of the EU-Mercosur Partnership Agreement and also the Interim Trade Agreement. So there's kind of two parts to the Mercosur deal when you look at it closely. And those agreements, as you said, are now going to be signed in Paraguay on Saturday, marking an end, I suppose, to 25 years of negotiations between the European Union and the Mercosur countries, which of course includes Argentina, Brazil, Paraguay and Uruguay. Now, President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, and the President of the European Council, Antonio Costa, will both be present at that signature ceremony with the Mercosur countries. And tomorrow, President Costa and President von der Leyen will travel to Rio de Janeiro to meet President Lula of Brazil. Now, the agreements will require the consent of the European Parliament before they can be formally concluded, Charles, and a vote is expected amongst MEPs in the coming weeks. Now, as you said there in your introduction, thousands of farmers, we believe somewhere around 27,000 farmers attended a protest in Athlone against the Mercosur deal on Saturday. And farmers have also been holding demonstrations in France, Poland and Belgium in recent days. And we'll hear more about the Irish protest shortly from our colleague Breifne. But in response to the concerns of farmers that have been raised in recent months, the European Commission has unveiled that range of safeguards which we've spoken about here on the podcast, which it says includes stronger checks and controls on imports. But many farmers still remain unconvinced about this. Now, attention, as I said, it's firmly focused on the outcome of the upcoming EU Parliament vote. And Agriland has contacted Ireland's 14 MEPs in advance of that vote to ask them how they intend to go on that, because there had been, I suppose, speculation if the parliamentary parties, the government parties of Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael would use the party whip to ensure that their MEPs would vote against the deal. But what we have is confirmation. The following MEPs have told us they are going to vote no. Kathleen Funchion from Sinn Féin, Billy Kelleher, Fianna Fáil, Cynthia Ní Mhurcu, Fianna Fáil, Nina Carberry, Fine Gael, Barry Cowan, Fianna Fáil, Lynn Boylan, Sinn Féin, Maria Walsh, Fine Gael, Eoin O'Riordan from the Labour Party, Michael McNamara, Independent, Ciarán Mullooly, Independent Ireland. Now, Sean Kelly from Fine Gael has said he is currently undecided about how he's going to vote, but Regina Doherty from Fine Gael and Barry Andrews of Fianna Fáil have both told Agriland that they are going to vote in favour of the deal, and we're still waiting to hear from Luke Ming Flanagan about how he is going to go in that vote. And we have a full report on the comments from the MEPs on our website and app, so you can read more about that. And just to note as well, Charles, as an aside, but it is important as well that a number of MEPs, including Ciarán Mullooly from across Europe, have written to the President of the European Parliament, Roberta Metsola, urging her to seek the opinion of the Court of Justice of the European Union, that's the European Union's highest court, in relation to the trade agreement. So we'll have to see how that pans out. That's been something that's been in the works for the last couple of weeks as well. Look, back home, Charles, I suppose government coming out making comments about the outcome of the vote at the IFA AGM, which was held this week. Taoiseach Micheál Martin addressed the AGM, and he said that the government has been engaged intensively at EU level to voice Ireland's concerns in relation to the Mercosur trade agreement. And he said that while in recent weeks we did secure improvements to the overall agreement, including through the proposed regulation on safeguards, he said there were concerns remaining. And here's some of what Micheál Martin had to say to IFA members.
We concluded that the new and additional commitments, while welcome, were not sufficient to satisfy the concerns of our farmers and our consumers, and so we took the decision to vote against the EU-Mercosur agreement. We will continue to advocate on this issue, and I as Taoiseach and we as a government remain committed to supporting agriculture and ensuring the long-term financial and environmental sustainability of the sector.
And that was Taoiseach Micheál Martin there addressing the IFA AGM, which understandably, Charles, was dominated by the Mercosur trade deal and other issues, including, of course, CAP and the nitrates derogation. But Minister for Agriculture Martin Hayden said that last week's European Council vote on Mercosur was very significant. And he said the Irish government voted very clearly and that there was no doubt in the way that the government voted. He said people shouldn't be surprised by the government's decision to vote against Mercosur, as it was a commitment in the programme for government. And he said he would await the outcome of the Parliament vote, and he said he intends to ensure that commitments made by the Commission in terms of stepping up checks and audits are honoured. And he said if necessary the agreed safeguards need to be rigorously enforced. And he dismissed any connections that have been, I suppose, speculated upon in recent weeks between the Mercosur trade deal and the recent nitrates derogation extension for Ireland as well. Now, IFA President Francie Gorman said again that the Mercosur deal, it's bad for Irish farming, it's bad for public health, and it's bad for rural Ireland, but it's also bad for the European Commission, in his opinion. And he said that he expects the government now, after they took that stand last Friday, to do more. And he said there is a commitment to work with other countries opposed to the deal. He said that work has to continue before that vote in the Parliament. And just to note, Charles, some farmers are quite unhappy about how the government has handled themselves in the run-up to last Friday's vote in terms of not declaring their intention to vote no earlier. And the Irish Beef and Lamb Association, the IBLA, has gone as far as calling on Micheál Martin to step down as Taoiseach over his handling of the trade agreement as well.
We'll focus now specifically on that massive protest or rally that took place in Athlone last weekend. It was organised by Independent Ireland and had the support of all the farm organisations whose members turned out in their thousands. Here's just a taster of what happened.
Postpone the provision to export beef, chicken, white meat and grain from South America until we can have guarantees on the ground with regard to food safety.
Thank you to everybody that came out today to send a very clear message to Ursula and her merry friends that Ireland says no to Mercosur.
That was Independent Ireland MEP Ciarán Mullooly and Independent Ireland TD Michael Fitzmaurice speaking there, and they were both central to organising the protest. Breifne, you were there at the protest, so can you give us some insight into the atmosphere there and what the farmers were saying?
Yeah, Charles, so we were down in Athlone on Saturday morning, January 10th. I suppose we got down there about 7:30am. It was just outside Ganley's in Athlone where the tractors were all initially supposed to meet. So I suppose in the early hours, 7:30, 8:00, there was only a small number of tractors there. But there had been reports coming in of large convoys of tractors from all across the country pretty much, making their way up to the event. So, by maybe, 9:00, 9:30, they were starting to come in their droves, and there was, huge numbers of tractors, lorries, all sorts of agri vehicles gathered there, and then people as well flocked in their thousands to the event in buses, cars, tractors, everything else, they all made their way down. And then I suppose everybody eventually made their way then to the college then in Athlone where there was speeches from all the representatives there. It wasn't just Independent Ireland, there was all the farm lobby groups were given time to speak, and a lot of them all highlighted their concerns. But it was probably in recent years, Charles, it was definitely as big of a farmer protest as has been seen in Ireland in a long time. There was huge round of applause for Michael Fitzmaurice and MEP Ciarán Mullooly when they arrived at the event, and the Independent Ireland politicians, be it councillors or other TDs. So yeah, huge crowds of people all standing, rounds of applause as well, and so I suppose talking to some of the people that were there on the day, a lot of them, their main concern is the Mercosur deal and its potential impact on Irish farming, beef farming in particular. Other people were just there in solidarity with Irish beef farmers. If it was a concern for Irish beef farmers, we had a lot of the contractors were there, and beef farmers would be their main customers, and they were there, I suppose, in solidarity to support the beef farmers. And I suppose another interesting thing that I noted from the whole event, Charles, was the number of young people that were there and they were really engaged and were following the news, the current affairs, what was happening in relation to the Mercosur deal. So I suppose that was another interesting point from the day. So here's just a little clip here of what some of the farmers we spoke to on the day had to say. What's your biggest concern? Is it the Mercosur deal?
Yeah, it's the Mercosur deal, because if the beef starts coming in, we won't, the price and stuff for us, it'll just go down to rock bottom again. So
I'm working with the contract there, and the lads are trying to gather up a few men, so we said we'd come down and show a bit of support, I suppose.
And I suppose the contractors are here, is it because they depend on the farmers, or why are the contractors?
It all depends on the farmers. Everything sort of circulates around the farmers. Sure, we wouldn't be at this if we didn't have farmers, such a way. So.
Really, the standard, it's a double-tier standard you're talking about. There's going to be a two-tier beef coming into this country and coming all across Europe. And it's not us that's going to affect, it's going to affect the kids going forward and stuff like that.
And there's an awful lot of young people here. Why do you think that is?
I suppose our government haven't really stood up for us, and we want to show them that we're not happy.
And that was just some of the farmers that spoke to Agriland at the farmer protest and rally against the EU-Mercosur trade deal, which took place in Athlone on Saturday. And it looks like that won't be the end of the anti-Mercosur events either. Ciarán Mullooly has announced a plan for a series of events in Ireland, Brussels, Strasbourg and across Europe against the deal. As part of that, an invitation for Taoiseach Micheál Martin and Taoiseach Simon Harris to travel to Strasbourg to further the case for opposing the deal has been issued. So Mercosur clearly is an issue that won't be going away anytime soon. Moving on from Mercosur now, but staying with beef and staying with yourself, Breifne, you had an interesting story just today on the Agriland website and app on a beef processor that was fined 18 times for breaches of carcass trim requirements in 2025. So what happened here, can you tell us?
Yeah, that's right, Charles. And I suppose it's always one that attracts interest from farmers is the story on the carcass trim breaches. So I suppose we had a story there, just today on from the Department of Agriculture. Food and the Marine, they confirmed that one factory was fined for breaches of carcass trim requirements in 2025. So a spokesperson from the Department of Agriculture told Agriland that in 2025 the department inspected just under 60,000 carcasses for compliance with carcass trim standards. So of these 60,000 odd carcasses inspected across all the department approved factories, one factory was fined for breaches of these carcass trim requirements. So this factory was fined 18 fines of €250. That was €4,500 of a fine in respect of the 18 carcasses concerned. So the department spokesperson also confirmed that the factory concerned was Kepak Meats in Kilbeggan, County Westmeath, and that the fine had been paid. So I suppose just on the carcass trimming, the EU regulation on beef trimming states that no fat, muscle or other tissue may be removed from the carcass before weighing, classifying and marking. So except in the case obviously where veterinary requirements are applied. So looking back to last year, as of July of last year, one factory had been fined for breaches of carcass trim specifications. That was Dawn Meats in Grana, had been fined on 3 instances, resulting in a fine of €750. And then in the years 21, 22 and 23, there were no factories fined for breaches of carcass trim specifications. So that's just an update on that story there now, Charles.
Thanks for that, Breifne. Well, that wasn't the only reason Kepak was in the news this week. The processor has confirmed that a review of its beef deboning and cutting operations is now underway at its Clonee site, which has sparked concern for the future of some jobs at the site. Aisling, what has Kepak announced here?
Yes, Charles. So on Tuesday, Kepak confirmed that this review was underway at its Clonee facility in County Meath. The company says that it has more beef deboning and cutting capacity than supply can sustain at its facility. And it said the review is taking place because of the ongoing supply challenges across the Irish beef sector that have reduced cattle kills, leading to lower processing volumes. And in a statement this week, the company said that while this imbalance has been managed in recent years through adjustments to working hours and shift patterns, many employees have consistently not worked full weeks. And it said the purpose of the review is to better align beef deboning and cutting capacity with the longer term beef supply outlook, thus supporting more stable, predictable and sustainable employment and business. Now, according to Kepak, the abattoir at Clonee is not affected by the review and it will remain fully operational, just for farmers to be aware of that. And the company also stressed that it intends to continue to source and slaughter cattle from its farmer supplier base, as it has done at the site for more than 45 years. And it said that no decisions arising from the Clonee deboning capacity review have been made at this stage. There is a 30-day consultation process with potentially impacted employees that is now underway. And as the review relates to specific operations rather than the entire site, the company said it would be inappropriate to speculate on its outcome, but it did acknowledge that this review has created, as you said, Charles, uncertainty for its staff, and it said it's committed to engaging openly with them throughout this consultation and supporting those who are affected, exploring redeployment opportunities across its other sites with the objective of retaining as many staff as possible as Kepak employees. So it's a story that we will keep an eye on, and as Kepak did say, a 30-day consultation process with staff now underway. So we'll see what develops from that.
Well, staying with beef briefly, there was some good news for the sector this week. Following on from the announcement last week that Vietnam would open its doors to Irish beef for the first time, we learned this week that China will begin accepting Irish beef again. Access to the Chinese market had been closed since October 2024 following a single case of atypical BSE in a cow here. Now market access has reopened to China, so that's welcome news for the beef sector in Ireland. Now, switching lanes to the dairy sector, the significant slide in milk prices seen in the latter half of 2025 looks to be continuing, at least for now. Aisling, we've seen a couple of milk price announcements in the last 7 days, as well as the first Ornua PPI announcement for the year, relating to December, of course. And these announcements are enough for a farm organisation to call for an EU-wide voluntary milk reduction scheme. So can you take us through all that?
Yes, Charles, as you said, unfortunately, that downward trend in milk prices of recent months is continuing with the latest processor announcements this week covering milk supplies made by farmers for the month of December. So, Lakeland Dairies was first to make an announcement. As usual, it confirmed a 3 cent a litre cut to its milk price in the Republic of Ireland and a 2.5 pence a litre cut in Northern Ireland. The processor said qualifying farmers will also receive an out of season payment on top of the base price, and it added that to help and support farmers through the current market challenges, it will pay a loyalty payment on all 2025 milk supplies. Now, Lakeland said that unprecedented volumes of surplus milk continue to weigh on global markets following the surge in supply in recent months, and that's led to increased inventories impacting across all dairy commodities. And it added that consumer demand remains behind supply due to global economic uncertainty and cost of living pressures, and this combination continues to put pressure on farm gate prices. Now, the other processor to have announced a milk price at the time of recording this podcast this week was Kerry Dairy Ireland, which has also cut its milk price by 3 cent a litre. And in a statement, Kerry Dairy Ireland said that global milk production remains strong, particularly across Europe. And it said the continued growth in output, coupled with high inventory levels and muted demand from the food service sector, continues to exert downward pressure on the dairy market. Now, as always, stay tuned to Agriland for milk prices as they are announced from other processors. But I'd say based on previous months, it's safe to say that there will be other cuts announced to milk prices from other co-ops out there. Now, you mentioned the Ornua Purchase Price Index as well, the first one of 2026 announced, which of course relates to December, and the PPI recorded another monthly decrease with its indicative milk price falling by almost 3 cent a litre. The Ornua PPI for the month of December is 129.4, which is down from the previous month when it stood at 138. And after deducting estimated processing costs of member co-ops, Ornua's PPI implies an indicative milk price of 37 cent a litre. And as I said, that represents a drop from 40.1 cent a litre, which Ornua said reflected weak market returns for the month of December. Now, you mentioned farm organisations in terms of their reaction to the milk prices that we've got so far, and I suppose the wider picture out there as well. And the Irish Creamery Milk Suppliers Association President Dennis Drennan today has called on the European Commission to introduce a voluntary milk supply reduction scheme as those milk prices continue to fall for farmers. And he pointed to 2016 when the EU introduced an EU-wide scheme, which he said provided a payment to individual farmers to voluntarily cut their milk supplies for a specified period. And he said the scheme worked almost immediately by changing market sentiment, and critically, he said it provided dairy farmers with an option of either producing more, the same, or less milk in a market downturn. And he said the key was allowing farmers to make the decision for themselves because they know better than anybody else their individual circumstances. And he said, we did this in 2016, and a decade later we need to do it immediately, and certainly well before peak production in the coming months. And he pointed to global supplies being up 2.3% between January and November of 2025, compared to just a 0.1% increase in the same period in 2024. And he said that the market has probably overcorrected itself now at this stage, in his opinion. But as usual, he said the only person paying the price for the market turbulence is the dairy farmer. And he called on the government to back this proposal, which he said is supported by the European Milk Board. So we will see. And it would be interesting to hear from dairy farmers out there as well. Is it something that you would have an appetite for? Is it something that you would take advantage of, a payment to, I suppose, supply less milk in the coming weeks ahead? If that is something that would affect you. Obviously, a lot of farmers dried off at the moment as well, Charles, so it may not apply to them. But yeah, as Dennis Drennan said, there may be something that has to be done ahead of peak production.
Now, if you're a farmer in rural Ireland, you might like the outpoint of Guinness at the weekend. You might also, from time to time, need to post letters, parcels, or even different types of samples from your animals. Well, unfortunately, in the last week, we learned that the price of a pint and the price of a stamp are both going to increase following announcements from Diageo and An Post. So, Aisling, what do we need to know here?
Yeah, Charles, it seems the cost of everything is rising. And this week, as you said, 2 announcements. Let's start with An Post first before people think about going for a pint, because the Postal Service has confirmed that the price of a national stamp is going up by 20 cent to €1.85 from Tuesday, the 3rd of February. And a new 350 stamp for letters to anywhere in Europe, including Britain, is going to be introduced. That marks an increase of 85 cent. And An Post said the increase is in line with global trends and it's below the EU and British benchmark for domestic next day letter service. And a new rest of world stamp is going to be introduced at a price of €3.95, which An Post said is required to stem significant losses on this category of outgoing mail due to a 38% fall in international letters over the last 3 years. Now, An Post said it's taking this action to safeguard national delivery services and equal access to letter services nationwide for uniform prices. And I suppose it's interesting to note the move comes as more European postal companies are stepping back. We saw in Denmark there at the end of last year, the Danish Postal Service delivered its last letter on December 30th, ending more than a 400-year tradition. And instead now Danes are using a delivery company to post their letters. So An Post says that this I suppose, move is to safeguard the network we have here in Ireland. And look, it's important to note that any existing stamps, national or worldwide stamps with N or W or a specific euro denomination will remain valid and fully usable after February 3rd. But yeah, from that date, we're looking at an increase in the cost of posting a letter, a parcel, as you said, samples for farmers, anything of that nature, or even the old humble Christmas card, if I can mention that, so far away or so close to Christmas, depending on how you look at it. Now, so if you are looking to go for a pint this weekend, Charles, unfortunately, as you mentioned, Diageo confirmed this week it's increasing the price of its pints again from next month due to what it said are industry-wide cost pressures. The drinks company said that in order to maintain sustainable operations in Ireland, it's informed publicans that there will be an increase to the list prices for its full draft product range. Now, that all means that a pint of Guinness is going to increase by 7 cent, while 10 cent will be added to the cost of a pint of Guinness 00, which is growing in popularity, of course, the non-alcoholic option. Now, Diageo confirmed that the price increases will take effect from February 2nd. The Vintners Federation of Ireland, unsurprisingly, they've strongly criticised Diageo's decision and they've warned that the move will pile yet more pressure on pubs, which are already struggling to survive. And Pat Crotty, who's the chief executive of the VFI, said publicans are being hit from all sides, but drinks costs are the biggest burden that they face. And he said this latest price increase from Diageo will put even more pressure on pubs that are already operating on extremely tight margins. And he said that many will be left with no option but to pass this on to customers, which he said helps no one. And the VFI has called again on suppliers and the government to recognise the scale of the challenges facing the pub sector here in this country. And the Federation wants the government to introduce targeted supports to help pubs remain viable.
Now, at the start of the podcast, I promised that we would talk about Ireland's favourite make of tractor, so we won't keep you waiting any longer. The Farm Tractor and Machinery Trade Association, the FTMTA, has released the most recent set of data for tractor sales in Ireland. So, Aisling, any surprises here?
Yes, Charles, drum roll please from producer Will, because I know how loyal farmers can be to a particular make of tractor, whether it might be green or red or blue or perhaps another colour. We see it all the time, you know, when we go to the ploughing every year, Charles, children decked out, pledging their allegiance to a particular make of tractor. And often that's a lifelong allegiance that we see. But it does appear from the FTMTA figures, Charles, that John Deere remains the most popular brand of tractor. Don't shoot the messenger if you don't agree with it. This is what the stats say in Ireland. And as you said, that is the most available data for 2024. So that data for 2024 shows John Deere is most popular in terms of tractor sales across the country, followed by New Holland and Massey Ferguson, which are tied for second place, and Case, which is in third. So there you go. Plenty for farmers to debate there over possibly a pint in the pub before those prices might go up, Charles. And look, just to note as well, the FTMTA has said as well that just over 2,000 new tractors were registered in 2025. That's up 14% compared to 2024. 2024. And you can find out more details on that on Agriland. And you can also find out details of LAMA, which of course is the Lincolnshire Agricultural Machinery Manufacturers Association show, which is the UK's leading agricultural machinery, equipment and technology show. We have some images from the show, and a record 21 Enterprise Ireland client companies are taking part over there, flying the green, white and gold flag in LAMA this year. So if you won't get a chance to kick those tires in person, you can find some coverage from the show on our website and app.
Well, that almost brings us to the end of today's podcast, but just before we go, we have two quick updates to bring you. First, Minister for Agriculture Martin Hayden has announced the issuing of annual forestry premium payments for 2026. The Minister confirmed that €23.5 million in annual income tax-free premiums were made to more than 6,500 forest owners last week. The payments relate to over 57,000 hectares of forestry around the country, so good news there for those forest owners involved. Second, the restricted period for organic and farmyard manure, which includes slurry, has reopened for farmers in Zone A, which includes counties located across the southeast of the country. Farmers in this zone, as well as zones not yet open, are advised to put a plan in motion to get the timing and spreading of their slurry right this spring. And that's where we'll leave it for today. Please don't forget to rate, review and follow The Farming Week on Spotify, Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. We'd love if you could spare some time to give us 5 stars and share The Farming Week with anyone you think might be interested. From Aisling, Breifne and myself, take care.
This podcast is sponsored by AXA Farm Insurance. AXA offers tailored cover to fit your unique needs, whether it's public liability or protection for your family home, outbuildings or farm vehicles. Based in Athlone, the AXA Farm team of agri-specialists and regional managers work together to ensure you receive the seamless support you need. Switching to AXA is easy thanks to an innovative online service that enables you to quickly and easily find the best cover for your needs. For more information, head to AXA.ie. AXA Insurance Stack is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.